Commissioners. Thank you for your patience. Everybody have a seat. State, you may proceed.
Yes, thank you. Okay, proceeding along, and I believe we got to submission 45. Can you tell us what that was?
So submission 45 were 3 sets of swabs. So 45A, as we itemize it at PBSO, 2 swabs from the pink backpack in BMW. 45B, 2 swabs from rifle bag handles. And 45C, 2 swabs from rifle bag body.
Okay. And then submission 46, did there come a time when the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office lab received a submission known as standard from a Marcus Stewart?
Yes, that is submission 46, his oral standards.
And then submission 47, what was that?
Submission 47 was a black R glove from the back L seat of the Honda.
Now, let's just to recap, and we'll go through your results now from July 13th of 2017. So we see a couple more standards were sent in, Marcus Stewart and some of the victims, as well as some more swabs from the evidence, from additional evidence. Going back to those gloves that are marked 18A and 18B, collected by Bryant the day after the homicide. You originally told us that glove 18A1, the wrist swabs were, the results were who?
Hold on.
Going back to March 21st, 2017.
The wrist area of the gloves was 2 individuals. Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as a contributor to the major profile.
Okay. And did you then test against Brandy L. Salhi, Kelly Doherty, and Marcus Stewart?
Yes, for any new standards that are submitted, I always go back and compare to evidence that was previously worked. So in this case, a previous DNA profile was obtained from the wrist area. Brandy El Sahi, Kelly Doherty, and Marcus Stewart are excluded as contributors to that major DNA profile.
And that's the wrist area 18A1, correct?
Yes.
Now, from the other glove, glove B, which is 18B, the other glove in this exhibit, originally you had told us that there was on 18B1 the presence of 3 individuals, correct?
Yes.
Of which Sean Henry, Vorpagel, and Vasata were excluded as the major profile, correct?
Yes.
And then in 18B2, that second glove still, there was a mixture of at least 2 individuals, correct?
Yes.
Vasata was excluded along with Vorpagel and Henry, correct?
Yes, they were excluded from the major profile.
Did you then, with glove B, compare Marcus Stewart's profile now that you had it?
Yes, so Marcus Stewart, Brandy El Sahi, and Kelly Doherty were all compared to that major DNA profile.
And tell us on glove B what your results were.
A DNA profile was previously obtained from the outer glove, 18B-1. Marcus Stewart could not be excluded as a contributor to that major DNA profile. The probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random as having that same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals. Brandy El Sahi and Kelly Doherty are excluded as contributors to this major DNA profile.
And how about 18B2, the inner glove of that second glove?
A DNA profile was previously obtained. Marcus Stewart cannot be excluded as a contributor to the major DNA profile. The probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random as having the same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals.
Okay. Now, going in order, your submission 19C, swabs from the blood-like stain or substance number 3 at the crime scene. You had originally told us that 19C was single source profile, Vasata, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Even though it was single-sourced, did you exclude out Brandy El Salhi, Kelly Doherty, and Marcus Stewart?
Yes, they were excluded.
Okay. Submission 19D, swabs from the blood-like stain number 2 in the Honda. You originally told us it was a mixture of 2 individuals, Vasata being the major, with the profile being more rare than 1 in 300 billion. Did you then match El Salhi, Doherty, and Marcus Stewart to see if you could find out who the minor was?
So for 19D, the minor DNA profile in that mixture, there was just not enough genetic information for comparisons, so no comparisons were made to that portion. However, they were excluded as contributors to the major DNA profile.
When you say they, we're talking about
Yes.
Stewart, Doherty, and El Salhi, okay?
Yes.
25A, swabs from the Glock pistol magazine. In March, you had a DNA profile and indicated the presence of 3 individuals, correct?
Yes.
Vasata being the major profile with the more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals, correct?
Correct. He cannot be excluded.
And then now you just tested El Salhi, Doherty, and Marcus Stewart against to see if you could find out who was the minor of that. Were they excluded from that?
At this time, I didn't compare to the minor profile. I still couldn't do a statistic at this time. So those 3 individuals, El Salhi, Doherty, and Stewart, were compared to the major DNA profile, and they were excluded.
Okay. How about submission 41, which you did not have back in March? You didn't look at submission 41. Now looking at submission 41, which is a black T-shirt from the front right seat of the Honda. Now having Stewart and Vasata, Vorpagels, everybody's DNA profile, did you obtain DNA and what were the results?
A DNA profile was obtained from the inside-out neckline, the inside-out top back, and the underarms area of the black T-shirt. So those were areas that would have been swabbed, and the swabs were submitted to me, and indicates the presence of at least 2 individuals. Marcus Stewart cannot be excluded as a contributor to the major DNA profile. The probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random as having the same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals. Sean Henry, Charles Vorpagel, Christopher Vasata, Brandy El Salhi, and Kelly Doherty are excluded as contributors to this major DNA profile. Due to excessive allele dropout of the minor contributors, because remember, this was a mixture of at least 2 individuals, so those minor contributors, there's not enough genetic information to compare, so comparisons for inclusions and exclusions will not be performed.
We have Marcus Stewart as being the major profile with the profile more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals, correct?
Yes.
On the black T-shirt from the right front seat of Honda.
Yes, on the swabbings that were taken.
We have a submission 42 black hoodie. And tell us what your results were on the black hoodie.
A DNA profile was obtained from stain 1 and indicates 2 individuals. Christopher Vasata cannot be excluded as a contributor to the major DNA profile. The probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random as having the same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals. Sean Henry, Charles Vorpagel, Brandy El Salhi, Kelly Doherty, and Marcus Stewart are excluded as contributors to this major DNA profile. Due to excessive allele dropout, the minor portion of that mixture, the minor DNA contributors, the results are not suitable for comparisons, and comparisons will not be conducted.
All right, let me break up that black hoodie. It's submission 42, and if I could approach, do you see the notations for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office submission 42 from this item?
I see our evidence label, and then I can see the unique identifiers of the serologist, Deandra DaCosta, in this case.
And are you looking here? It says DSD, Deandra DaCosta,
Yes.
and then the submission 42, Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And it's all on the evidence, State's Exhibit 312, collected by Teresa Bryant on February 6, 2017, in the morning at 9:47 a.m., a Gildan brand dark-colored hoodie jacket, size XL, correct? And so were more than one areas of this hoodie did you get swabs from?
Yes, so there were several stains. I tested stain 1, and then there were also swabbings of the inner and outer ends of the sleeve and the inner and outer hood.
So the first one you talked about, stain 1, was
Yes.
that Christopher Vasata as the major,
Correct.
and the profile being more rare than 1 in 300 billion?
Yes.
And then tell us what DNA profile, if you did you obtain from the inner and outer ends of a sleeve and inner and outer hood? And that's Exhibit 42-6.
A DNA profile was obtained from the inner and outer ends of the sleeve and the inner and outer hood area and indicates the presence of 3 individuals. No DNA was eligible for a statistic at this time, so as a result, comparisons for inclusions and exclusions will not be performed.
And then the Puma sock, submission 43, did you analyze that for DNA?
Yes.
In your results?
A DNA profile was obtained from the outer socks, 43-1, and indicates the presence of at least 5 individuals. Due to the complex nature of this DNA mixture, the results are not suitable for comparative analysis. Comparisons for inclusions and exclusions will not be performed.
Submission 44, a black T-shirt from the back left seat of the Honda. Did you do DNA on that?
Yes.
And let's talk about area 44-1. The swabbings from the outer neckline, the inside out, top, back, and the underarm area of that black T-shirt from the back left seat of the Honda, did you reach a DNA profile?
A DNA profile was obtained from the inside out neckline, inside out top, back, and underarm areas, so that's 44-1, and indicates the presence of 2 individuals. Christopher Vasata cannot be excluded as a contributor to the major DNA profile. The probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random as having that same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals. Sean Henry, Charles Vorpagel, Brandy El-Sahi, Kelly Dougherty, and Marcus Stewart are excluded as contributors to this major profile. And then due to excessive dropout of the minor contributor, the results are not suitable for comparative analysis and comparisons will not be performed.
Submission 45A, swabs from the pink backpack and the BMW.
A DNA profile was obtained and indicates the presence of at least 3 individuals, but DNA was not eligible for, or DNA data was not eligible for a statistical calculation for this mixture, and as a result, comparisons will not be performed at this time.
Submission 45B, swabs from the rifle bag handles.
DNA profile was obtained and indicates the presence of at least 2 individuals. Due to excessive allele dropout of the mixture, the results are not suitable for comparative analysis and comparisons will not be performed.
And then swabs from the rifle bag body.
A DNA profile was obtained and indicates the presence of at least 3 individuals. Due to excessive allele dropout, the results are not suitable for comparative analysis and comparisons will not be performed.
Let's talk about submission 47, a black, it says R glove from back left seat of Honda. If I can show you what's been admitted in is 196. Do you see markings from you all, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office that show that this is submission 47?
Yes, I see our evidence label as well as Ms. Deandra DaCosta's identifiers.
Okay. And from this exhibit, the black R-circled glove from the back L-circled seat of the Honda, and Ms. DaCosta, did she forward you swabs that she took of this glove?
Yes, swabs of the inner glove were tested.
And swabs from the inner glove, that's 47-2. Can you tell us what the results were from that black glove from the back left seat of the Honda?
A DNA profile is obtained from the inner glove and indicates the presence of 2 individuals. Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as a contributor to that major DNA profile. The probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random as having the same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals. Sean Henry, Charles Vorpagel, Brandy Asahi, Kelly Dougherty, and Marcus Stewart are excluded as contributors to the major DNA profile. And due to excessive allele dropout of the minor contributor, the results are not suitable for comparative analysis and comparisons will not be performed.
Let's go then to your next report. Is that August 4th, 2017?
Yes.
All right. And you were given some swabs from inside of the Honda, is that correct?
Yes, there were 5 set of swabs submitted.
So submission 54, it's called lifts from the Honda, but the driver's, 54A, driver's seat, 54B, driver's seat back, 54C, driver's seat headrest, is that correct?
Yes.
And just give us the results from 54A, B, and C.
So for 54A, which were the lifts from the Honda, several areas, for 54A, DNA profile was obtained. It indicates at least 4 individuals. No statistical calculation could be performed on that mixture, so as a result, comparisons were not performed at that time. Submission 54B were lifts from the Honda, the driver's seat back, and a DNA profile was obtained and indicates the presence of at least 3 individuals, but there was excessive allele dropout, so comparisons were not conducted for that profile. Submission 54C, lifts from the Honda, the driver's seat headrest. DNA profile was obtained. It indicates at least 3 individuals. Again, due to excessive allele dropout, the results were not suitable for comparative analysis, and comparisons for inclusions and exclusions will not be performed.
And then submission 55, swabs from the Honda. 55A, 2 swabs from the front top center console. 55B, 2 swabs from the front driver armrest. 55C, 2 swabs from the gear shift handle. 55D, 2 swabs from radio knobs. 55E, 2 swabs from rear view mirror. Did you receive any results from those?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Submission 55A, the swabs from the front top center console, a DNA profile was not obtained. Submission 55B, swabs from the front driver armrest, a DNA profile was obtained and indicates the presence of at least 2 individuals. Due to excessive allele dropout, the results are not suitable for comparative analysis, and comparisons for inclusions and exclusions will not be performed. For submission 55C, swabs from the gear shift handle, an insufficient amount of DNA was detected during quantification, so the sample was not processed further.
Okay. And let's move on then to your, what's your next report dated?
Did you want me to finish the results for 55D?
Oh, yes, if you could, thank you.
Submission 55D, swabs from the radio knobs. A DNA profile was obtained, but due to excessive allele dropout, the results were not suitable for comparative analysis. And then submission 55E, swabs from the rear view mirror. DNA was not detected.
Right. And that was the report dated August 4th of 2017. Is your next report dated November 16th, 2017?
Yes.
All right. And is StarMix now on board at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
I talked about how you all went back in this particular case and reran some of the samples using StarMix. Did you do that with other cases as well?
Yes, we can.
So it's not just this particular case you're using StarMix for, it's for every case now in the Sheriff's Office, correct?
Correct. Anything that was run with the chemistry that we're currently using that is eligible for StarMix, we can reevaluate and see if we can put it into StarMix.
All right. Now, with the statistics we've been talking about, the first population statistics, we're getting the one rarer than 1 in 300 billion. Are we now going to be moving into likelihood ratio statistics that you told us about?
Yes.
All right. So Tell us now what this report, November 16th, 2017, what you did differently or which samples that that we ran.
So when reevaluating evidence for star mix, there's one thing that I, as the analyst, have to put into the software, and that's my determination, and that's how many people are in the mixture. And it needs to be a definitive number. So 2 individuals, 3 individuals, 4 individuals. I can't put in at least 2, at least 3. The software needs a definitive number. So I reevaluated all the evidence in the case to see what qualified. So these would be samples that were reported. I could not do a statistic at this time, so comparisons were not done. If that was the case in the previous reports, and I determined a definitive number of contributors, so 2 individuals, 3 individuals, 4 individuals, then I could reevaluate that profile for star mix.
Okay. Let's go then back to submission 18. The gloves, the pair of gloves collected by T. Bryant on February 6, 2017, 9:49 a.m. Tell us what your results were with 18B. Is 18B the second glove? Tell us what your results were on that one, because we had a mixture, correct?
Yes, a DNA profile was previously obtained from this outer glove, and I did additional analysis, the star mix analysis. So it was previously determined to be 3 individuals. So now I put it into star mix to help pull apart that mixture, and the software provides an approximate contributor ratio, so kind of like a breakdown. So there's contributor 1 was approximately 89% of that mixture. Contributor 2, about 7%, and contributor 3, about 4%. If you think of 100 M&Ms, 89 are green, 7 are red, 4 are blue. Kind of that's the breakdown. So individuals that could not be excluded now. Marcus Stewart and Christopher Vasata. Marcus Stewart most closely matched with contributor 1, and Christopher Vasata most closely matched with contributor 2.
Just to regroup, this pair of gloves, 18A, in your original report, you had Christopher Vasata on glove 18A as being the major contributor with the statistic 1 in 300 billion, correct?
On 18A-1, the wrist area, yes.
Yes. And the now glove B is what we're talking about here. So you didn't go back and do likelihood ratio on A, you did it on glove B, correct?
Yes, I did it on any samples that I couldn't do a statistic before.
Okay. So on glove 18B, the second glove, contributor 89% you determined would be Stewart, Marcus?
His profile most closely matches with contributor 1, correct?
And then most likely contributor 2, 7% Vasata, correct?
Yes.
All right. Start talking to us now about what the likelihood ratio is for Marcus Stewart.
So the likelihood ratios are scenarios or explanations for the DNA data. And based on the case scenario that I have, the 2 explanations were given the profile that I obtained. What is more likely? If the DNA profile came from Marcus Stewart, Christopher Vasata, and some unknown individual that we don't know, or did it come from 3 unknown individuals in the population? Those are the 2 scenarios that I weighed against each other. So the DNA profile obtained is approximately, it's in scientific notation, so I'll read it, 2.35 10 to the 38 times more likely if it originated from Marcus Stewart, Christopher Vasata, and an unknown individual than if the DNA profile came from 3 unknown individuals in the population.
So what does that mean? 2.35E to the 38th?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell us more about that mathematical statistic.
So for likelihood ratios, remember the larger the number, the more weight for one scenario versus the other. So that number translates to 235 undecillion, just in case the word helps. But if you were to take 2.35 and you move that decimal over 38 times, and you add the zeros, that's the number that you're looking at. So it's quite a large number.
Can you give us, do you have a breakdown of hundreds, thousands, millions? Can you give us all the way down?
I have a reference sheet that I use, but Yeah, I have a reference sheet that I use
Okay,
it
do
to
you
be.
have that?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So just as a reference, a million is 10 to the 6, a billion is 10 to the 9, a trillion is 10 to the 12, quadrillion 10 to the 15th, quintillion 10 to the 18th, sextillion 10 to the 21. So it just continues further down.
Okay, and we're all the way down 10 to the 38,
Yes.
and that, what number is that called?
So it would be 235 undecillion. That's how that number.
More likely, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, let's go to submission 19A, the swabs from the back left interior door handle. Honda?
Okay. So a DNA profile was previously obtained, and the profile was determined to be 3 individuals. So again,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but back in March, you said that. It was 3 individuals, but you couldn't give us a statistic, correct?
correct.
Now you can. Go ahead and tell us.
So pulling apart that mixture, how does those contributors kind of fit into the mixture? There's an approximate contributor ratio, contributor 1 being about 64%, contributor 2 about 25%, contributor 3 about 11%. So now being able to compare individuals that could not be excluded were Sean Henry and Charles Vasata, and all the,
Charles Vasata or Christopher Vasata?
I'm sorry, Christopher Vasata.
Okay.
Individuals that were excluded from this mixture, Charles Warpagel, Brandy Elsahi, Kelly Dougherty, and Marcus Stewart.
Okay. And do you know who contributor 1 was, the 64%?
So for this particular sample, I ran several different scenarios, depending on if an individual, did they fit into the, because this is a complicated mixture, it's not a complete profile. There is some dropout, but I can still compare. I ran several scenarios. So scenario 1, if Sean Henry and Christopher Vasata contributed together, that was one scenario I ran. And then just if Christopher Vasata was a contributor to that mixture, and 2 unknown individuals versus 3 unknown individuals. And the third and last scenario I ran was Sean Henry. Was he a contributor with 2 unknown people or 3 unknown people?
All right.
So I ran several.
So go ahead and give us your first scenario.
So for scenario 1, under the stated assumption of 3 contributors, which I previously determined, it's not possible for Sean Henry and Christopher Vasata together to be contributors to this mixture. It
is not possible?
For them together to be contributors.
Okay, what does that mean?
For this DNA profile, it's a low level or there is dropout in the profile. And when we're looking at complicated mixtures like this, we're essentially saying, is the genetic information represented in the profile? And sometimes with dropout and with complicated profiles, people are included, but when you put them together, the profile can't be explained by both of them contributing.
All right, so you can't have both of them in this same mixture, correct?
Correct.
All right, so then your scenario number 1 is what?
So this scenario has, if Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown people contributed versus the DNA profile originating from 3 unknown individuals. So the DNA profile obtained is approximately 148,000 times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals, that's the first explanation, versus the DNA profile originating from 3 unknown individuals.
Okay, and then your scenario 2.
So the other scenario that I looked at, because Sean Henry could not be excluded, the DNA profile obtained is approximately 405,000 times more likely if it originated from Sean Henry and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals.
Okay. When you say, can you give me that statistic again?
405,000.
Okay. And then those were the 3 scenarios, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Submission 19B, swaps from the steering wheel of the Honda.
So this was previously determined to be 3 individuals, and we have that contributor breakdown because we were able to pull apart the mixture. Contributor 1 contributed approximately 85% of that mixture. Contributor 2 is about 10%, and contributor 3 was about 5%.
And who is the assumed contributor for the 85%?
The assumed contributor was Sean Henry, because based on the case scenario, I believe this was his vehicle. And with StarMix, we have the ability to assume an individual. So if there is a reasonable expectation that your DNA profile would be found on an item, I can assume that you're there in the mixture. Examples of these would be if I were to swab your wrist, I would expect your profile to be there because I'm swabbing your skin cells. Items that you frequently touch, maybe a steering wheel, or underwear that belong to you, these are items that I have a reasonable expectation that your DNA profile will be there. So that's why for this instance, I assumed his DNA profile.
And then for contributor 2, who contributed 10%, did you put in a scenario of that possibly being Vasata?
Yes, he could not be excluded. So now I look at two scenarios. So with the DNA profile that I obtained, the two scenarios that I ran were the DNA profile is approximately 168,000 times more likely if it originated from the first explanation, Sean Henry, Christopher Vasata, and an unknown individual, than if the DNA profile came from Sean Henry and two unknown individuals.
Now, and you gave us your results, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Submission 25A, swabs from the Glock pistol magazine.
A DNA profile was previously obtained, and I had previously determined this was 3 individuals in this DNA mixture. The contributor breakdown, contributor 1 was approximately 77%, contributor 2 was about 15%, and contributor 3 was about 8%.
Going back to March of 2017, you had given us the statistic already on submission 25A, the swabs from the Glock pistol magazine, correct?
I believe so. I just want to check. Yes. So Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as a contributor to that major DNA profile. But in this case, I was looking at the minor portions because now I could do a statistic for those minor contributors.
Okay, but the major portion of 25A swabs from the Glock pistol magazine was Christopher Vasata. Same major DNA profile would be more rare than 1 in 300 billion individuals, correct?
Yes, that was from March.
But it was a mixture, presence of 3 individuals, so let's go now down to look at the mixture. What results did you have of that?
So I have that Christopher Vasata could not be excluded and provided a likelihood ratio for that, if you'd like me to read that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the scenario, the DNA profile obtained is approximately 3.19, 10 to the 23, so that's 319 sextillion, times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals. And individuals that were excluded from the entire mixture now, because I can compare even to the minors, Sean Henry, Charles Vorpagel, Brandy El-Sahi, Kelly Dougherty, and Marcus Stewart. They were all excluded.
And 28C, swabs from Rifle Magazine. Or no, I'm sorry.
28B.
28B, swabs from Frame Receiver.
So
Rifle Frame Receiver.
A DNA profile was previously obtained. I determined this was 3 individuals. So now running it through StarMix, the mixture breakdown that we're looking at, contributor 1, about 69%, contributor 2, about 25%, and contributor 3 is around 6%.
Prior to that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but back in March, prior to that, on submission 28B, swabs from Trigger Guard Rifle Magazine, you said it was 3 individuals mixture, correct? But you could not provide a stat.
Yes.
Now you can, correct?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell us what that is.
So individuals that could not be excluded, Christopher Vasata most closely associates with contributor 1. Marcus Stewart is contributor 2. So the DNA profile obtained is approximately 1.12, 10 to the 44, or 112 tread decillion, times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata, Marcus Stewart, and an unknown individual, than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals in the population.
So what was the contributor ratio, though, to that swabs from the frame receiver rifle? Contributor 1,
Contributor 1 was approximately 69%,
contributor 2,
approximately 25%,
contributor 3,
approximately 6%.
and your likelihood ratio for contributor 1, the 69%, was who?
Christopher Vasata was deemed as contributor 1.
Okay. And Stewart, contributor 2, 25%?
Correct.
And what was that stat again?
So weighing the two explanations if the DNA profile came from Christopher Vasata, Marcus Stewart, and an unknown versus it coming from 3 unknowns, the DNA profile obtained is approximately 112 tredecillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata, Marcus Stewart, and an unknown than if it came from 3 unknown
What
individuals.
is tredecillion? Can you read us your chart again?
So it's 1.12, and you would move that decimal 44 times over.
Okay.
Let me see.
Do you have your reference chart?
Yes, so a tredecillion is 42 zeros, but with the stat, the way you would word it is 112 tredecillion.
Okay, so 42 zeros would be after that,
Yes.
correct? All right. The submission 42, the black hoodie. Did you, originally you gave us, it was we had a stain 1, it was the presence of 2 individuals, correct?
Yes.
And Chris Vasata could not be excluded as the contributor to the major DNA profile, more rare than 1 in 300.
Correct, that was stain 1.
Stain 1. Now you looked at, you didn't look at stain 1 again. What part of the black hoodie did you look at?
So I looked at the swabbings from the inner and outer ends of the sleeve and the inner and outer hood area, 42-6.
And that's submission 42, collected by Teresa Bryant, to February 6, 2017, 9:47 a.m. And so go ahead and tell us what your results on that were.
A DNA profile was previously obtained, and I had previously interpreted it as 3 individuals. So now using star mix, and it can pull apart that mixture, the contributor ratio that we're looking at is about 53% for contributor 1.
Can I stop you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Did you say you a DNA was previously obtained from the inner and outer ends of the sleeve
Yes.
and the inner and outer hood? Is that what we're talking about now?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Contributor 1 is approximately 53%. Contributor 2 was about 33%, and contributor 3 was about 14% of the mixture.
And did you determine the likelihood ratio if 53% of the contributor?
So individuals that could not be excluded, Marcus Stewart was associated with contributor 1.
53%,
Correct.
okay.
Christopher Vasata was associated with contributor 2, which was 33%.
Okay.
And then the likelihood ratio of running. So what is the explanation? What are 2 explanations for the DNA profile I obtained? So the DNA profile obtained is approximately 84 duodecillion, 600 undecillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata, Marcus Stewart, and an unknown individual than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals in the population. And
With that statistic, what is, how many zeros do we have?
so it would be the number 8.46. You would move that decimal over 40 times. So it's 8.46 with 38 zeros after it.
38 zeros. Okay. Moving on to, that was November 16th. Let's move to November 20th, 2017. And what did we do differently here in this report? Just more items?
In this report, there was no more items being tested. It was requested for additional likelihood ratios to be calculated. So a likelihood ratio is based on the explanation, and it was requested, well, I have a different hypothesis, a different explanation for the data. Can you run that too? So that's what this report is.
Okay. And is that what StarMix can do for you?
Yes.
To give you, hey, try this scenario if these other people are involved, correct? Or if these people are involved.
Or Yes, if individuals cannot be excluded, running them in the mixture by themselves or together, or assuming individuals, these are different propositions that,
Okay. So running a different proposition on the gloves, the submission 18, the pair of gloves found by Teresa Bryant, February 6th, 2017 at 9:49 a.m. We've already talked about it twice, but 18B, that second glove, what likelihood ratio did we run?
so for this, there's two that I ran. In the first report, I ran Marcus Stewart and Christopher Vasata together in that mixture. In this report, we wanted to separate them, see how they fit into the mixture by themselves. That was the request. So the first one, Marcus Stewart could not be excluded. Again, he associates with contributor 1 of the mixture. So the DNA profile obtained is approximately 23 octillion, 500 septillion, times more likely if it originated from Marcus Stewart and 2 unknown people, so that's the first explanation, than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown people, or unknown individuals in the population.
Because before we ran Stewart and Vorpeg or Vasata together, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now we're just separating them out, right?
Yes.
But the the report right before this, did you say that Marcus Stewart was contributor 1 anyway with 89%, correct?
Yes.
That doesn't change, right?
No, it did not change in this case.
We're not changing, the new likelihood ratio we ran, that doesn't change that fact, correct?
Correct.
All right, and then that Stewart was contributor 2, 7%, correct? That didn't change, right? Or not Stewart, I'm sorry, Vasata.
Correct. He was still associated as contributor 2.
Okay, which was 7%, right?
Yes.
Okay, we just have new statistics, so now let's do contributor 2, the likelihood of Vasata being contributor 2. What were the stats on that?
The DNA profile obtained is approximately 1,740,000,000 times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals.
All right, and then submission 28A, we did the same thing, swabs from frame receiver of the assault rifle. Originally, you told us 28B was contributor number 1, 69% Vasata, correct?
Correct.
Did that change?
No.
We're just separating him out and putting him alone, correct?
Correct.
What were the statistics then on that likelihood?
So the DNA profile obtained is approximately 43 septillion, 700 sextillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals in the population.
And septillion is how many zeros?
This would be, septillion is 24 zeros.
And then contributor 2 for 25% of that DNA profile, Marcus Stewart, what would his stats be, separated him out alone?
The DNA profile obtained is approximately 841 trillion times more likely if it originated from Marcus Stewart and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals in the population.
And then last for that new likelihood scenario, submission 42, the black hoodie, of which you originally contributor 1, 53% Stewart, contributor 2, 33% Vasata. Did you separate them out?
Yes.
What were Marcus Stewart's likelihood if we just put him alone with 2 unknown people?
The DNA profile obtained is approximately 1 quintillion, 710 quadrillion times more likely if it originated from Marcus Stewart and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals.
And then Christopher Vasata for contributor 2.
The DNA profile obtained is approximately 58,200,000,000,000 times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile originated from 3 unknown individuals in the population.
Okay, now, your last report, January 29, 2018. What did we do differently what's new with this report or this series of testing?
So there was one standard that was submitted, as well as swabs from the hoodie from the Honda, and that had 8 sets of swabs from that hoodie.
Okay, so let's talk about the new standard or known profile that you received. Whose known profile did you receive now?
2 oral standards from Luke Kasukos,
Could you spell his last name?
Kutsukos.
And what did you compare against Luke Kasukos's known profile? All of the evidence?
All the evidence that was previously tested, his profile will get compared to.
Okay. And did you do that?
Yes.
So going back through all of the evidence we talked about, such as your submission 18, the pair of gloves, the hoodie, the swabbings from the firearms, the swabbings from the Honda, magazines, all of that you ran Luke Kasukos's profile against?
Correct, I compared.
And could you include Luke Kasukos with his DNA on any of those items?
No, anything that was comparable, he was excluded from. Major profiles or the mixture as a whole.
Okay. He was excluded from everything?
Let me just go through, make
Okay.
sure. Yes.
Now, you said the other additional testing that you did finally was submission 58A, swabs from a hoodie, from within the Honda, correct?
Yes, there were several swabs from hoodie in the Honda.
And that's hoodie from the Honda, that's your number 58A, that's different than your submission 42, correct? It's a different submission number, right?
Different submission number, yes.
Okay. Go ahead and tell us what your results were from the swabs from the hoodie and the Honda, and if you can tell us, differentiate what areas of the hoodie were swabbed.
So for submission 58A, swabs from the INT, maybe interior, but the int hood from the hoodie from the Honda, this was the DNA profiles obtained, and it was one individual.
One individual's DNA
Yes,
from the hoodie within the Honda, correct?
yes.
And go ahead and tell us who that was.
So Christopher Vasata could not be excluded to this profile. At this time for PBSO, we were only using star mix to generate statistics, so the statistic is in the form of a likelihood ratio,
Okay.
even though it's only one individual.
All right, and go ahead and tell us what those are.
So the DNA profile obtained is approximately 104 octillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata, explanation 1, than if the DNA profile originated from an unknown individual.
And what stat is that? Give us you said octillion?
104 octillion. So an octillion is 10 to the 27.
How many zeros is that?
27 zeros.
Okay. And go ahead and tell us more. Did you exclude Sean Henry, Vorpagel, Brandy, Kelly, Marcus Stewart, and Luke Kasukos?
Yes, all those.
Still all excluded.
Yes, all those standards were excluded from the DNA profile obtained.
Okay. And then submission 58B, is that more swabbings from the hoodie from the Honda?
Yes, this was swabbing from the EXT of the hood area.
Exterior of the hood area?
Yes.
Okay, of the hoodie area. Go ahead and tell us who that number 1 contributor was and what percentage it was.
So this was a DNA mixture of 3 individuals. So the breakdown for that mixture was about 94% contributor 1, 4% contributor 2, and 2% contributor 3.
And who was the number 1 contributor, 94%?
So Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as contributor 1. The DNA profile obtained is approximately 31 octillion 100 septillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile obtained originated from 3 unknown individuals.
Okay, and then, again, the rest of the people were excluded, correct?
Yes, all the other standards that I had were excluded from the mixture.
58C, swaps from the interior neck hoodie, from the hoodie found in the Honda. What were those, who was the contributor to that?
This was a DNA profile that was only 1 individual. Christopher Vasata could not be excluded, and the DNA profile obtained is approximately 104 octillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata than if the DNA profile originated from an unknown individual.
And what, how many zeros are there for that?
Octillion, I believe, was 27 zeros.
7 zeros. And again, the rest of the people we've talked about were excluded, Luke Pasuko, Stewart, those people?
Yes.
58D, swaps from the exterior neck hoodie from the Honda. What were your results there?
A DNA profile is obtained, and this indicates 3 individuals. So we have the mixture breakdown. Contributor 1 was about 95% of the mixture. Contributor 2 was about 3%. Contributor 3 was about 2%.
And the contributor 1, 95%, who did your results show that was?
Christopher Vasata was associated with contributor 1. The DNA profile obtained is approximately 31 octillion 500 septillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile obtained originated from 3 unknown individuals in the population.
That's 31 octillion, 28 septillion?
500 septillion. So
500.
octillion was 27 zeros.
Okay. And again, the rest were excluded?
Yes.
And submission 58E, swaps from the interior right cuff of the hoodie from the Honda.
So the DNA profile was obtained indicates 3 individuals. So we have the contributor breakdown. Contributor 1 was about 86%, contributor 2, 13%, and contributor 3, 1%.
All right. And who was contributor 1?
Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as contributor 1. The DNA profile obtained is approximately 6 octillion 420 septillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and 2 unknown individuals than if the DNA profile obtained originated from 3 unknown individuals.
And how many zeros is that?
27 zeros.
27
Or
for the
octillions.
Okay. And the rest were excluded, correct?
Yes.
Swaps 58F, swaps from the exterior right cuff hoodie from the Honda.
So a DNA profile was obtained, and this indicated 1 individual.
Okay.
Christopher Vasata could not be excluded to that DNA profile. The DNA profile obtained is approximately 85 octillion 100 septillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata than if the DNA profile originated from an unknown individual in the population.
Are the rest excluded?
The rest, all the other standards I have to compare were excluded.
And there were, because there was only 1 contributor, correct?
Correct.
From that area. Submission 58G, swaps from interior left cuffs of the hoodie from the Honda.
This was a DNA mixture of 2 individuals, and our contributor ratio breakdown, contributor 1 was about 92%, contributor 2 is about 8%. Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as contributor 1. The DNA profile obtained is approximately 44 octillion 400 septillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and an unknown individual than if the DNA profile originated from 2 unknown individuals in the population.
And were the rest of the individuals excluded?
Yes.
And then finally, 58H, swaps from the exterior left cuff of that hoodie from the Honda.
A DNA profile was obtained and indicates 2 individuals. The approximate contributor ratio, contributor 1 was about 98%, contributor 2 is about 2%, and Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as contributor 1. The DNA profile obtained is approximately 38 octillion, 400 septillion times more likely if it originated from Christopher Vasata and an unknown individual than if the DNA profile originated from 2 unknown individuals in the population.
Okay. I can have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Is that the end of your reports, Miss? I always use your other name.
Margetts.
Forget.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 2 names. All right. I don't have any further questions at this time for this witness.
Cross. You're welcome. Oh.
So, Ms. Margetts, when you first started talking to the state attorney today, you were talking about different types of body fluids, skin cells, sperm, blood that you can recover DNA from.
Yes.
And when we talk about epithelial skin cells, we're talking about that touch DNA when somebody handles something,
Correct.
okay? And different people shed skin cells at different amounts.
Yes.
And it also depends on the surface that's being touched,
Correct.
because a very rough surface is likely to take off more skin cells than a smooth surface.
Yes.
And really, the most concentrated form of DNA comes in blood.
I wouldn't say it's the most concentrated, but it can have high levels of DNA.
And obviously, I mean, so when individuals are at the medical examiner's office, we don't swab their cheeks for the standards, you take a blood sample.
We can, sometimes if there is cheek cells available, they will do that. It depends. But yes, you can use blood standards or cheek standards. One or the
All the
other.
standards that you receive from the medical examiner in this case were blood standards,
Yes, I believe so.
okay? And so one of the things that you talked about also early on is that you wear certain protective wear in the lab, right?
Yes,
In order to prevent contamination.
correct.
So if someone has never touched an item, how in the world would their DNA get on it?
Referring to transfer.
Okay?
So there's what's known as transfer. So we can transfer DNA, and there's different levels of transfer. So it's primary, secondary, tertiary. So an example would be if I were to touch a blood stain. Me touching that, that's primary transfer. I physically touched it. Now, if I go touch a door handle, maybe the blood on there, that's secondary transfer, because I've transferred that blood to that door handle. Now, tertiary transfer would be someone touching the door handle and then getting the blood on their hand. So they never physically touch that blood pool, but through all the transfers, that's how that could happen.
Okay. And it can be more than just blood, though. It can actually be skin cells that are transferred from one thing to another.
It can, yes.
Okay? And you've had instances in your lab where there has been contamination by someone from the crime lab.
From personnel, from collecting, we have had instances, and those have been documented, yes.
Okay? And you have to document those in order for your certification to continue.
Correct. That's part of those standards to document any instance of that.
And so crime scene collection, we're actually talking about those CSIs like McClendon and Bryant, who testified in this case, who are out in the field collecting things and using gloves and using proper procedure, right?
If that's their protocol. I'm not familiar with their protocol.
Okay? But you have had instances where somebody in the field who was actually engaged in collecting evidence has transferred their own DNA onto evidence items.
Yes, it has happened.
It's a very small amount of DNA that's necessary in order to show up in a result from your lab.
Correct.
Okay? How many actual cells do you need in order to get a result?
I believe it's around 50 cells you would need to get a single source profile.
If you had to look at 50 cells, what would it look like?
Ooh.
Can't see it, right?
You can't see it. Yeah, you can't see it. You would need a microscope.
Okay. So it's just an incredibly minuscule amount will get a result, right?
It can, yes.
All right. So I want to talk to you about the evidence in this case. And I'm going to start by talking about 18A, which is also denoted as item 310, which is this pair of gloves, right? Have you ever seen this packaging before?
I have not, no.
Okay, so you talked to the jury in this case about two submissions that came to the lab. One of them was 18A and one of them was 18B,
Yes,
right? They're both in this package,
correct.
okay? So this two separate items of evidence with different results are actually commingled,
They're packaged together, yes.
okay? Which means that DNA from one can transfer to the other.
It can, yes.
Okay, I mean, nothing's been done in order to prevent that in this case,
With that packaging, no.
okay? And so in particular, you talked about 18A, which is one of the gloves in this case, and you kept referring to it as the wrist area. But 18A1, which is denoted as the wrist area, was also submitted to Ms. DaCosta for serological testing.
I believe she got the glove and then she swabbed that area, the wrist area.
And did serological testing.
Yes, I can look
Okay.
at her notes.
You have
Yes.
access to her materials, correct?
I do.
All right, and in the case file for this particular item, the serological testing for 18-1A, which is the glove, reveals that it is an item that tests positive for blood.
Correct.
Okay? So that very effective biological material for conveying DNA or finding DNA is in this bag with every other area of the gloves that are swabbed.
Yes, so that stain was blood, correct?
Okay. And that stain that you tested, 18A, came back with a major profile of Mr. Vasata, right?
Yes.
But that major profile is blood.
So with DNA profiles, I can't 100% say it's from blood, but the stain tested positive for blood, and that was the DNA profile we obtained.
There were other profiles, or there were other submissions from 18A. There was 18A2, which is the outer glove, and 18A3, which is the inner glove, that do not have a result for blood, and you did not test.
Correct. Those were collected, and they were not tested.
So only the stain that involved blood was tested,
Yes.
okay? For 18AB, that is a second glove that is also in this package with the blood stain,
Yes.
right? And that is also an item that you tested that you concluded was Mr. Vasata's in the major profile.
18B was glove B, and the major male profile, I believe, was Marcus Stewart.
With Mr. Vasata as a contributor.
Let me just double check. 18B. Oh, yes, that would be in the, sorry, just have to go back and forth. Okay, 18B-1, which was the outer glove. Yes, Christopher Vasata was associated with contributor 2 of that mixture.
Okay. But it is 89% Marcus Stewart with only a very small percentile of Christopher Vasata on the outside of the glove.
Correct.
Okay. And you did a second area of that glove, the 18B, and that is actually the interior of the glove, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's sort of the wearer side of the glove,
Yes,
Right.
that's the intention.
okay? And for that glove, you found that Marcus Stewart was the major contributor, and Mr. Vasata is actually excluded.
From the major, yes.
Right, okay. So with regard to these gloves, interior of the glove, not Mr. Vasata, blood stain, Mr. Vasata.
Yes.
So let's talk about then the swabs from the Honda. And I actually want to talk about several of them together. You have 19A, which is the left back door.
Yes.
19B, which is the steering wheel. 19D, which is a blood stain. And then you also have, I believe, a T-shirt and a hoodie from that particular vehicle. And have you ever, in the course of this case, been provided with any of the photographs that were taken from the inside of that vehicle?
No.
Were you aware that there was a great deal of presumptive blood testing done inside the vehicle?
No.
Okay. And I'm going to show you some photographs that are in evidence. 193. 191. Were you aware that there was a brown pillow that was recovered inside of that vehicle
I was not, no.
in the back seat?
No.
Okay. And the black hoodie that is from inside that vehicle, were you aware that there was presumptive testing done of that black hoodie as well,
No.
which also showed blood?
I was not aware of that, no.
Okay. Were you aware that there was presumptive testing done inside the vehicle on the door of the vehicle that showed blood?
No.
Or on the seat of the vehicle that showed blood?
No.
The headrest of the vehicle that showed blood?
No.
The glove compartment?
No.
No. You weren't aware that this was an area that was spattered with blood?
No.
Okay. You were, however, aware that Ms. DaCosta did a number of tests, serological tests for these items from the vehicle,
Yes.
right? Including the one that you tested, 19A, which is the left interior door handle, which is the driver's passenger side door handle,
Okay.
okay? And that was positive for blood.
Based on her notes, it was presumptively positive, which means we do a presumptive test first to give us an indication, could this be blood? But based on her notes, she says she's not going to confirm to see if in fact that is blood because it's such a small sample size.
Okay, from the door handle.
Yeah, from the back interior door handle, yes.
Okay, and you weren't aware that the CSIs had taken photographs of that door which showed blood?
No.
Or that they had done confirmatory tests on scene that showed blood?
No.
Or the blood that's all over the seat?
I was not aware of that, no.
Okay. 19B, which is the steering wheel of the Honda. Okay, now 19B, the steering wheel of the Honda, you find that it is, the majority of it is Sean Henry's, right?
19B, going to Starbucks.
That's the 11, 16,
Yes.
17.
That's okay. Yes.
Okay, and that Christopher Vasata, you conclude, is 10% of the mixture on that.
Right, so he most closely associated to contributor 2, which is about 10%.
Okay, were you also aware that Ms. DaCosta had tested that item for blood,
I can see it in her notes.
and it is positive?
19B, the steering wheel, she has it as negative for blood.
19B, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, negative times 2. Okay. were you aware that there was a video of this vehicle and a video that showed that Mr. Vasata is in the back seat and is not driving the vehicle?
No, I haven't seen, I wasn't aware of the video.
Okay, and the detectives didn't share that with you?
It may have been in the case scenario, but I don't recall at this time.
Okay, and so if Mr. Vasata does not touch the steering wheel of that vehicle, how would his DNA get there?
I don't know how DNA would get on any of these profiles. I can't testify to that. I can just testify to the results. So I'm not sure how it got there.
Well, you've already testified about transfer evidence, right?
That could be one explanation, yes.
Okay, so if Mr. Vasata never touches that item and his DNA is on it, then one of the better scenarios for this is transfer.
Right, so that could be an explanation, yes.
Okay, if we knew, the scenario was that we knew that Marcus Stewart or Luke Kasukas is actually driving that vehicle and touching that steering column, what would be an explanation for their DNA not being there?
I mean, it has to do with leaving behind the DNA and all the factors that we mentioned. Also, the sampling of the item itself. So most of the DNA profile that was obtained was associated with Sean Henry of the steering wheel, and that's an item that you frequently touch. So when you're collecting and when I'm sampling with the DNA extraction, I'm getting a lot of those cells. So maybe there's so many of those cells, I'm not seeing anyone else, if there is anyone else in that mixture.
Or they are wearing protective gear.
Yes, that's also another explanation.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, because you do get Marcus Stewart on a lot of these items,
Correct.
right? In particular, the gloves.
Yes, he's on the glove.
Okay, and the glove that has Mr. Vasata's blood on it,
Yes.
right? Okay, and so one of the scenarios that is possible is that Mr. Vasata's DNA is transferred to an item that he never touches due to Mr. Stewart touching it.
Or, yes, so that could be a mechanism for explaining the DNA, how it got there.
Okay, on the steering wheel.
Yes.
Okay, which would mean it is also a possibility that that is the mechanism that Mr. Vasata's DNA winds up on the rifle receiver.
It's possible. I can't say how DNA got anywhere with these profiles.
Okay. With regard to 19B and 19C, those are both swabs, right? Also positive for blood
Yes.
and positive for a result for Mr. Vasata,
Correct.
right? Okay, so item swabs from submission 3, which is a .357 Magnum Taurus revolver. I believe you listed as 22A, B, and C.
Yes, so those were swabs from that particular item.
Okay, and so those swabs that you tested, you said to the jury there was no DNA eligible for a statistical comparison.
Yes, that was the conclusion for, one moment.
22A,
22A.
and
Yeah.
B, and C.
For B and C, there actually was just so much genetic information missing that it was inconclusive for comparisons regardless of statistics.
Okay, and another way to say that, Ms. Margetts, is that you cannot identify any single person's DNA on that.
I would not make comparisons. There's too much dropout. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you cannot say that Mr. Vasata is on there,
No, it was inconclusive.
all right? Look at, please, 23A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
And this is the Glock, right? And you have actually a description there that indicates it's a Glock 40, 1 pistol, and 24 cartridges. On all of those items, that's the item that comes from the crime scene.
Yes, so that description, it's actually how it was entered into our evidence, that entire list of
Right.
description.
So obviously, 24 cartridges, that's the extended magazine with the Glock.
Okay.
all right? And so you do testing of that particular item that is recovered from Mohawk Street, and again, you have the same result as for the 357. You can't compare it to other DNAs?
Correct. So everything, so I didn't get, for 23B and 23C, there wasn't even enough DNA to continue in the process. It stopped at quantitation. For 23A and 23D, both of those, regardless of how many individuals, there was so much dropout, no comparisons were made, they were deemed inconclusive.
Okay, which means that you cannot say that this has anything to do with Mr. Vasata.
Correct. There was no comparisons made to that standard.
All right, and the next submission, ma'am, which is swabs from a single Glock magazine, 25A, okay, which is magazine from Chris Vasata's pants pocket. Okay, that is the magazine, the Glock magazine that you get a result on.
I believe so, if that was submission 10 that was entered into PBSO.
Okay. And for the magazine that is actually in Mr. Vasata's pocket, you find that he is the major contributor.
Correct.
Not surprising. In his pocket.
If it's found on his persons, that's possible, yes.
Okay. Item 27, which is submission 13 from Jupiter. Okay, rifle.
Swabs from the rifle magazine, but I believe the submission 13 is from PBSO, how it was entered. I don't know if it's the same as Jupiter.
Okay.
But that was at least 2 individuals, but there was so much dropout, I did not make any comparisons because it's inconclusive.
Okay. And inconclusive also means that you cannot tie it to Mr. Vasata.
Correct.
All right. Same thing for 28A, which is the trigger guard for the rifle.
Correct. That sample had the same conclusion.
Okay. And we've talked about the mixture of DNA that is found on 28B, which is the receiver of the rifle.
Yes.
Okay. That is a mixture of Mr. Vasata and Marcus Stewart.
Correct.
Okay. Which you cannot exclude as being transfer.
I cannot say how a DNA profile got on an item, no.
Okay, that is also an item that there was no serological testing done on.
Let me verify. Correct. Her notes say the swabs were grayish discoloration, but there was no serological testing.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the T-shirts, okay?
Okay.
I believe that you have on your July 13th, 2017 report, an item listed as number 40, which is a black T-shirt.
Yes, in this report, there's 2 black T-shirts. One was,
One second. Okay, I'm going to get to it. The same report, you also have number 41, which is a black T-shirt,
yes.
okay? And then in your report that is dated January 29th, 2018, you have an item listed as 44 black T-shirt. Okay, so one is called 40 black T-shirt from I-95. One is called 41 black T-shirt from right seat of Honda. And one is called 44 black T-shirt from the left seat of the Honda.
Correct.
Okay, so there are actually 3 identical black T-shirts in this case.
I didn't see the shirts. I don't know if they're identical, like brand-wise, but they're all labeled black T-shirt from various areas.
Okay. And so on the first one, 40, you are not able to make comparisons to DNA. Can't identify who's wearing it.
For the first report, correct. I could not do a stat in the July report, so no comparisons were made at that time.
Okay, and that's number 40, the one that's actually on I-95.
Correct.
Above the culvert where the guns are.
if that's what the case says.
Okay. All right, can't tell who's wearing that. Number 41, which is from the rear seat of the Honda, or the right seat of the Honda, I'm sorry. I think that's right. Okay, that one comes back with a major profile linked to Marcus Stewart.
Correct.
Okay? And 44, which is the T-shirt from the back seat of the Honda,
Yes.
right, is the one that you connect to Mr. Vasata.
Correct. He could not be excluded from the major DNA profile.
Okay. All right, and so let's talk about number 42, which is the black hoodie.
Okay.
Okay, and the black hoodie, actually, when you were speaking to the state attorney, you referenced 42, stain 1, stain 2, stain 3, stain 4, stain 5.
Yes, there's 5 stains that were found.
Blood stains.
1 through 4 confirmed as blood. Number 5 was negative for blood
Okay.
with the presumptive test.
And that is the item in this box?
I believe that was submission 42.
Dark colored, yes. Okay. And so this item of clothing, not unlike the gloves in this case, when they are packaged up by the CSI and put in there, they're packaged up all together.
I'm not sure, with submission 42, it's just the hoodie, correct?
Right, it's the hoodie.
Yes,
The hoodie that has multiple blood stains on it,
yes,
okay? Which is packaged into one package without removing the blood stains, covering the blood stains, anything like that,
yes.
okay? And so even when we get a result such as 42-6, that's the one that you referred to, the inner and outer ends of the sleeve and the inner and outer hood, there's no serological testing done on that,
Correct.
okay? So you haven't excluded the possibility that there is blood,
It was not tested for blood, so correct.
okay? And so that one item, 42-6, is part of the package that contains the hoodie that has 1, 2, 3, 4 stains of blood on it.
Yes.
Okay. The items from 45B and 45C, these are a rifle bag?
Yes. 45B is the rifle bag handles. 45C was the rifle bag body.
And no DNA that you could compare in that case?
No, the DNA that I obtained had excessive allele dropout, so no comparisons were made. It was deemed inconclusive.
So you cannot link that to Mr. Vasata either?
No.
Okay. Then we have an item, sorry. $196. $196 is a glove that is labeled, a right glove that is recovered from the back seat of the Honda. Okay, that's number 47 for you.
Yes.
Okay, and this one as well, you have listed as 47 stain 1.
So what was tested was actually the swabbings from the inner glove. DNA analysis was not conducted on stain 1.
Okay, but what you have is stain 1 that is listed as positive for blood on the serological reports?
Yes, both stain 1s and 2 confirmed for blood.
All right, so, and then 47-2 is also from inside the glove, but that also tests positive for blood.
Correct.
Okay, so those stains aren't removed from this glove. This glove is just packaged up in here with the blood on it.
Correct.
All right? But with regard to 47-2, that one you find to be major contributor is Christopher Vasata, but it is positive for blood.
Correct.
Okay. Item 58, which is the hoodie that is recovered from the Honda. Okay, and the hoodie from the Honda, you have 58A, 58B, 58C, 58D, 58E, and 58F. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oh, G and H too. 8 tests that you run for the hoodie that's in the Honda,
Correct.
right? But that particular hoodie on every single stain or every single swab that you test is positive for blood.
So 5 of the stains confirmed for blood, meaning the presumptive test was positive and the confirmatory test. 3 of those stains, it was presumptively positive, but it was negative for blood. There just might not have been enough to confirm for blood.
Okay, and by that you mean that there might not be enough to confirm for blood, but because that item with multiple blood stains is packaged in one package, you can't exclude the possibility that there's blood.
I wouldn't exclude it, no, because it tested presumptive positive. I just can't definitively say there's blood there.
Okay. Now, you talked a little bit about the calculations that you had and your comparisons of other individuals. And the state actually asked you the question of, could you confirm that Luke Kasoukas is in any of these mixtures?
Correct.
Okay. And so the mixtures that we are talking about are, for instance, in 18A1, that is a major profile. You could not make any comparisons to the minor profile.
Correct.
Okay. And 18B1, again, it is a major profile. No comparisons to the minor.
Let me just verify with Star Mix. So 18B1 was run with Star Mix, so essentially it's a comparison to the profile as a whole, not just the major.
Okay. 18B2.
Correct, he was excluded as a contributor to the major DNA profile.
But not as to the minor.
For the minor on this one, let me pull and see what it was. He was excluded from the minor as well.
Okay.
18, we're on 18.
And that is the 18B and A glove that are packaged together.
Yes.
Okay. 19, which is swabs from the rear door handle.
19A.
No, I'm sorry. Now I'm getting confused. 19D.
Yes, 19D, which was the swabs from BLS number 2 in Honda.
Huh?
He was excluded to the major DNA profile, and then the minor was deemed inconclusive. There was too much dropout.
Okay, which means he can't be excluded from it.
I would not compare to it at all.
All right, same thing for the Taurus. With regard to the Taurus handgun that is there, all of those profiles you deem to be not comparable to any other profile, so they also were not compared to Mr. Kasoukas.
Correct.
Okay.
What submission was the Taurus?
22,
22.
A, B, and
Yes.
C? Okay. Same thing for 23, which is the actual Glock with extended magazine from the crime scene. All of those profiles, A, B, C, and D, were inconclusive and not comparable, so Mr. Kasoukas was not excluded from those.
So all of those, they weren't compared. I would never make comparisons to include or exclude for those profiles that had too much dropout of genetic information.
Okay. Same thing for submission 27A, which is a swab from the rifle magazine. 28A, which is a swab from the trigger guard of the rifle. 28C, which is a swab from the rifle magazine. Okay, the results for that were essentially inconclusive. You couldn't compare them to anybody, which also means they weren't compared to Mr. Kasoukas.
Correct. The only exception was 28C, which I didn't even get a DNA profile. It stopped at quantitation.
Okay. And 41, which is, 40 and 41, starting with 40, which is the black T-shirt that is by I-95 by the culvert. On that one, you don't get a sufficient profile to make a comparison.
For this one, it was at least 2 individuals, and I couldn't do a stat. Even today, I couldn't do a stat, but maybe there's someone out there that has the tools, but I didn't do any comparisons to that profile.
Okay, which means that you cannot exclude Mr. Kasoukas from it.
Correct. No comparisons were made.
Okay. The black T-shirt, number 41, that is in the right seat of the Honda. No comparisons are made to the minor profile.
Correct. The minor is deemed inconclusive. There's too much dropout to make any comparisons for inclusions or exclusions.
Okay. Same thing with 44, which is the third black T-shirt. Minor profile is not compared to anyone.
It is inconclusive. There's too much dropout, so no comparisons for inclusions or exclusions.
One minute. We talked a little bit about this with the state attorney, about recognizing some packaging from the lab, and some of this, the packaging of evidence is sealed by Jupiter Police Department, right? And when you seal something, it contains the initials of the individual who opens it.
That's PBSO's policy for our sealing protocols.
Okay.
The initials and the date.
Right. And when PBSO seals it, it has this red tape, a second seal on it when they've opened it. And for instance, Ms. DaCosta has her initials there.
Yes, that's our protocol.
Okay. And it's fair to say, is it not, that when we have items of evidence that like this one. Swabs from the BMW that appear to be sealed by Jupiter Police Department, and there is no secondary broken seal, but those are items that haven't been submitted to you for testing.
I would agree with that. There's no PBSO evidence tape, so I haven't seen them.
So, what I asked you about. In the list of things that you did test in this case, were you aware that there were a bunch of swabs here that were taken from the BMW that was recovered at the scene?
I'm not aware of swabs from the BMW in particular. I don't think any were submitted. The only thing from the BMW, oh wait, let me check. I know the rifle bag was from the BMW.
Okay.
That was
the
in.
backpack was from the people.
Oh, the pink bag. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So some items of evidence that were swabbed and submitted. How about swabs from 2 water bottles that were in the BMW? Were you ever given those?
No.
Or swabs from the steering wheel of the BMW?
No, I believe most of the things I had were from the Honda. Do I have a BMW? No.
And so we've discussed those minor profiles that you couldn't exclude anybody from. And when the state asked you that question about whether or not you included Mr. Katsoukas as a DNA profile in anything, and you said no, that is only from the items of evidence that you were given to test.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Any redirect?
Yes. Madam, does the DNA lab accept unlimited swabs and samples from a case to test?
So at Forensic Biology Unit, we do have a case submission policy depending on the case type. And we just, we limit the items of evidence only to triage. So we can have as many rounds as needed, but for example, for homicides, there's 9 items of evidence that are requested. We're trying to triage, and those items of evidence are usually requested by the detective. And as a DNA analyst, I can kind of consult and maybe help, oh, maybe this would be a better item of evidence to test, but ultimately it's up to the detectives to request that item of evidence.
You all certainly tested more than 9 items in this case, correct?
Yes.
You made an exception in this case?
It's not an exception, it's just, it just was continually requested.
Okay. The questions were asked about, and I asked you questions about comparing the known standard of Luke Katsoukas against the evidence that you processed, correct?
Yes.
Anytime it was possible, in other words, if there wasn't excessive allele dropout, or those other couple reasons why you told us you wouldn't compare anyone to these standards or these unknowns, but when you had the ability to do so on any viable evidence, did you compare Luke Katsoukas against that?
Yes.
And did you detect his DNA on anything?
I did not.
You were asked certain questions by the defense of, well, how could someone's DNA get on an object? One of the things you were asked about was a steering wheel handle, where I think it was about Vasata being a contributor number 2, maybe 10%. If Vasata knew Sean Henry prior to this,
Objection to speculation.
Asking a more hypothetical fact.
could somebody contribute their DNA to an object prior to an incident? In other words, if someone drove a car or was in a car with someone a month before this incident, could some of their DNA still be there?
It could if the conditions were correct, like no one cleaned the steering wheel in this example. It could, it's possible.
In other words, do you have a test? Is there a DNA test that you can say, oh, this DNA was deposited on such and such date and time?
No, I can't tell when a DNA profile is deposited.
The questions you were asked also about serological testing. You were a serologist prior to becoming a DNA analyst, correct?
Yes, I'm still qualified in serology as well.
And the items that Deandra DaCosta chose to carry on blood testing for, is that because of the color presence of blood?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You can answer.
On the protocols at the forensic biology unit, in general, we would test items of evidence if there's indications of blood on an item. So if a swab appears reddish-brown, we would continue testing for blood using a presumptive test as well as a confirmatory test. Samples are not continued to confirmatory testing if there's a question of how much sample is on that swab, because ultimately we want to preserve the submission or the swab for DNA testing. And because the confirmatory testing for blood is, it does take a portion of that sample, although it's small, based on the case scenario and what it looks like, it may or may not continue, even if the presumptive test is positive.
You were asked a lot about some of these items, like a hoodie that had certain spots that tested positive for blood on them, right?
Yes.
But then also certain areas of the hoodie that were swabbed that did not appear to have blood on them, right?
I don't believe they were tested, no.
Okay, but I mean, let's talk about submission number 50, right, the ones underneath, like there's no presence of blood, they weren't tested, correct?
Right, so I believe
For
that
blood.
those swabs, those areas were swabbed for what we call wearer DNA, or trying to see who wore that item of evidence.
So we have swabbing for obvious blood as well as swabbing for wearer DNA where there's no blood visually detected, correct?
That would be the point of those swabs. I don't know if, I don't think there was testing done on those swabs, correct?
What testing are you talking about? Blood testing or DNA testing?
Blood testing.
Blood testing. That's okay. Is it possible for someone to bleed on an item and have DNA come from blood on that item, and also for them to be leaving their DNA from perspiration or from skin cells because they're actually wearing that item?
That's possible. The testing that I have, I can't pinpoint where the DNA profile came from, if it came specifically from blood or skin cells. I don't have that. The best we have is the serological testing to try to gauge and give us our best guess of what that biological fluid could be.
Okay. Now, the black hoodie, just to clarify, that's your submission 42. 42-6. Was there, did Ms. DaCosta take swabbings from the inner and outer ends of a sleeve and the inner and outer hood of submission 42?
Yes.
And you conducted star mix on those, correct?
Yes, so I did additional analysis with StarMix for this particular profile.
And the results of that were?
That 42-6. I was 3 individuals. Marcus Stewart could not be excluded as contributor 1. Christopher Vasata could not be excluded as contributor 2.
And contributor 1 percentage and contributor 2 percentage was what?
Contributor 1 was about 53%, and contributor 2 was about 33%.
Okay. I have nothing further at this time.
Could I see the lawyers at the bench?
Yes.
About the other issue outside their presence. So, ma'am, you're excused. Thank you very much. Watch your step. Make sure you gather up all your items, and make sure you don't have any of ours, including our laser pen. Thank you so much. Jurors, we kind of kept our promise. It's 12:25. We're done for the day. So you're going to get an early start on your weekend. Hopefully the weather's okay right now. And Monday morning, we'll be all refreshed, ready to go. Same drill. Gather up around 8:15, 8:20. Hopefully we start right at 8:30. And at that point, I'm going to give you a little lay of the land, where we're looking. I think we're a little ahead of schedule. So I will warn you now that at this juncture of the trial, as we grind towards the state resting, a lot of times the trial kind of slows down because we got to get things ready for you, and it just takes time sometimes. So we're trying to anticipate issues, and so we move smoothly, but I just give you the warning, sometimes there's legal discussions that have to take place. So any questions? Then great. Turn your pads upside down. Don't Google, Facebook. Don't read the newspaper. Watch televisions about the case in any way, shape, or form. See you back Monday morning. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
If he seals it, I'll sign it. I'm sorry? Did I mark it? No.
Could you grab them and come on up? The other side. Please.